Hello and welcome. I am Abyss from Killjoy Gaming, and today we are doing a deck demo. This is the deck demo that I will be showing is for the Fusion Festival. I will not be using this because I am free to play and I do not have the resources. So when we go to showing off this deck, I will jump to Dueling Nexus to show it off. Without further ado, let's get into it. Today's deck I will be showing you once Master Duel sites load. I probably should have had this loaded prior, but I am not great with things. I was spending 20 minutes just setting up. But it wouldn't be my channel without some sort of technical difficulty, so let's begin by showing this off. The deck we are talking about today is none other than Predaplant Despia. Now this deck is fairly odd. I think you'd get more mileage either doing any other variant of Despia. But hey, this one's funny and you can search pretty much any fusion spell off of certain cards. Now, let's get into the card by card. First we have Predaplant. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that. When your opponent monsters declare a direct attack, you can special summon this card from your hand. After damage calculation, if this card battles your opponent's monster, you can destroy that opponent's monster. If this card is destroyed by battle, or this card is sent to the field to the graveyard by a card effect. Now, be keen, this is not your opponent's card effect. This is any card effect. But it has to be sent from the field to the grave. You can add one Predap card from your deck to your hand. This does not specify whether it has to be a monster, so you can grab the trap I have in this deck, Predaplanting. But back to the card. You can only use this effect of Predaplant. I'm still not going to try and pronounce that once per turn. Now this is an odd hand trap, to say the least, but it's dark, and you can't get exploited by Invoked as much. Hence why this deck does not run Effect Veiler, because that gives Invoked to all players a direct line to Makaba, which we do not want. Next we have Despian Tragedy. If this card is sent to the graveyard or banished by a card effect. Now, keyword in this is there is no position this has to be sent to the graveyard or banished. This could be from field, hand, or deck. It just has to be sent by a card effect. You can add one Despia monster from your deck to your hand, except Despian Tragedy. You can banish this card from your graveyard, target one branded spell or trap in your graveyard, set it to your field. You can only use one Despian Tragedy effect per turn, and only once that turn. Now, you have to realize that if you have multiple Despian Tragedies, you're going to only be able to use one effect, so you have to keep that in mind. Next, we have Max C. I don't feel like going over the effect that almost everyone knows for hand traps, the common ones these days. Next, we have Predaplant Clamados. Yeah, no. We're going to call it Predaplant Clam. Monsters with predator counters that you use as fusion materials are treated as dark. During your opponent's main phase, you can fusion summon one dark fusion monster from your extra deck using this card in the field, and monsters from your hand, field, or monsters with predator counters your opponent controls as fusion materials. You can only use this effect of Predaplant Clam once per turn. Now, there's only one card in this deck that really gives predator counters, which is Predaplanting. We will get to that later. Next we have Lone Flyer Blossom. It's an easy way to get to Orphoscorpio or your Clam Fusion, or you could use it to get Sarah, Predaplant Sarah to the field, which then you could use something like Poly or Super Poly to get rid of it and search any Preda card you want. But Lone Flower Blossom just reads effect to be formal. Once per turn, you contribute one face-up plant monster, special summon one plant monster from your deck. All the Predaplant monsters are plants. Now, Predaplant offers Scorpio. This card is limited to 1, and for good reason. If this card is normal special summon, you can send one monster from your hand to your graveyard, special summon one Predaplant monster from your deck. It will almost always be Darlington Cobra. God, I just saw C and partial of an O, and I couldn't say its name. Wow. Except Orpheus Scorpio. You can only use this effect of Predaplant Orpheus Scorpio once per turn. Now to Orpheus Scorpio. If this card is special summoned by a Predaplant monster, which you will always summon off of Orpheus Scorpio, almost always, you can have one Polymerization or one fusion spell card from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Predaplant and Darlingtonia Cobra once per turn. And you will almost always grab either Super Poly or Fusion Destiny, depending on your situation. I prefer Fusion Destiny in all honesty. The Fusion Destiny packages can be replaced by a Shadal package if you want, though. But, you know, DPE. Next we have Ash Blossom, no introduction there. Celestial, 1/2 of the standard DPE Fusion Destiny combo, usually sent by the Link monster, which we can't do for the Fusion Festival. But for formalities, when this card declares an attack, you can target one face-up spell your opponent controls destroyed, and if you do, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. While you have no cards in your hand except during the card turn this was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card and one Destiny Hero monster from your graveyard to draw 2 cards. You can only use this effect of Destiny Hero Celestial once per turn. No really explanation needed. You're only usually ever going to use it to send it off with Fusion Destiny. Maybe you can use it for Super Rally, depending on the situations. Next we have Aluber, the Vtuber, the Jester of Despia. If this card is normal special summon, you can add one Branded Spell Trap from your deck to your hand. If a face-up fusion monster you control is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, while this card is in your graveyard, you can target one effect monster your opponent controls, special on this card. If you do negate the target monster's effect until the end of turn. You can only use one effect of Aluber, the Jester of Despia effect once per turn and only once that turn. Again, this has the same conditions, or the same lock as a Despian Tragedy, that you can only use one of each of its effects per turn. Normally you're going to be adding the field spell. And when you're not adding the field spell, you're adding Branded Opening. Dash, or the other half of the DP sendings. It does have a relevant effect, and it's not this first one, so we'll just go to the relevant effect. Once while this card is in your graveyard, when you draw a monster during your draw phase, you can reveal it, special summon it. This card must be in your graveyard to activate and resolve this effect, so watch out for Called by the Graves. Next we have Dramaturge of Despia. If a Fusion Synchro XE Link monster is special summoned except during the damage step, you can target one effect monster on the field, negate its effects until the end of this turn. If this card is in your hand, or if this card in your hand or field is used as a fusion material and sent to the graveyard or banished, keyword in that sentence is or banished, you can special summon this card. You can only use each effect of Dramaturge of Despia once per turn. This one's great because you can use each effect once per turn. I have added in this deck, why not? During the main phase, you can make all monsters you can control can't attack equal to its own level times 100 until the end of your opponent's turn. If this card in your hand or field is used as a fusion material instead of the graveyard, you can check one Despia level 8 or higher fusion monster that is banished or in your graveyard, except for add, special summon it. It's a one of, it's to get, some of your Despian fusions out of the graveyard. Or banished, depending on the situation. Nibiru, self-explanatory, gives your max C teeth, where your opponent's going all out. Poly, it's Poly. Fusion summon a monster from your using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material. Fusion Destiny, fusion summon. This is how you get to DP 95% of the time. Fusion summon one fusion monster from your deck that mentions Destiny or monster as material using monsters from your hand or deck. That's why it's so great. As fusion materials, but destroy during the end phase of the next turn. Also, for the rest of that turn, you cannot, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters except Dark Hero monsters. So this will be the absolutely last thing you do. You can only activate one Fusion Destiny per turn. I thought about running 2, not sure about that yet. Next we have Despia, the Third of the Branded. During your main phase, you can fusion summon 1 level 8 or higher fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand or field as materials. If a face-up non-fusion fairy monster you control leaves the field by an opponent's card effect or is destroyed by a battle, you can target 1 level 8 or higher fusion monster in your graveyard, special summon it. You can only use each effective Despia Theater of the Branded once per turn. I can't talk today. But to explain this, this card is wonderful. It's not only a fusion sub for level 8 and higher, which you have a lot of. That is not one of them. Most of your extra deck is level 8 or higher, though. Also, if a non-fusion monster, non-Despia, I think it is? Non-fusion fairy. So, all your Despia cards, pretty much, that are not fusion monsters. If they're destroyed, you can target 1 fusion monster in your graveyard and special summon it, which gives even more teeth to your deck. Super poly, discard it. It's wonderful. It's the quote-unquote non-existent spell speed 4, which just means neither player can activate cards or effects in response. But its effect is discard 1 card, fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from either field, so yoink your opponent's monsters for fusions. As fusion materials, neither player can activate cards and effects in response to this card's activation. It is wonderful. It's great for yoinking opponent's DPEs, Shadal monsters. I have 1 big Shadal target. Surprisingly, I didn't put any invoked in this, because usually when invoked is played, it's played with Shadal, and you know, they can't do dumb Alistair combos. Called by the Grave, another wonderful hand trap. It targets a monster in your opponent's graveyard, banish it, and negates its effect until the end of the next turn, so your opponent's turn. That is very key for stopping your opponent's plays. Branded Opening. Discard a card, then take 1 Despia monster from your deck and either add it to your hand or special summon it in defense position. Also, for the rest of that turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon from your extra deck except for fusion monsters. You don't care, your entire deck has fusion monsters. If a fusion monster you control would be destroyed by card effect, you can banish the card from the graveyard instead. You can only use each effective Branded Opening once per turn. Oh wow, another great each effect. That's why we run 3. And finally, we have Predaplanting. This is probably the worst card in the deck. If I were to add a Shadal engine, I would take these cards out. And probably Predaplant Sarah. But its effect is send 1 Predaplant monster from your deck to the graveyard and place 1 Predator counter on each face-up your monster on... Each face-up monster on the field. If you do, any of those monsters that are level 2 or higher become level 1, as long as they have a Predator counter. If you fusion summon a Dark Fusion monster, which is pretty much your entire deck except for this monster, which is light. Back to the card. If you summon a Dark Fusion monster while this card in your graveyard, except bring the damage tip, you can banish this card from your graveyard and then target 1 card on the field and destroy it. It does not define monster, spell, trap. You can destroy anything as long as you can target it. That is the important part. You can only use each effective Predaplanting once per turn. Not only can you get Preda counters for your clam, you can also turn things to level 1 to banish things with Chimera. Now to the extra deck. We have 1 Muddragon of the Swamp, which requires 2 monsters with the same name, with the same attribute but different types. Your opponent cannot target this card or monsters on the field with the same attribute as this card. With card effects, once per turn you can quick effect declare 1 attribute. This card becomes the attribute, attribute until the end of turn. 95% of the time you are calling Dark. Winda. I don't really think Winda needs any explanation. This is a super poly target to me. As your entire deck is Dark, all you need is a Shadal monster, and with enough, I really hope Shadal is popular in the fusion event, otherwise I would take this out for something better. First must be fusion summon, cannot be destroyed by opponent's card effects. Each player can only special summon monsters once per turn, while this card is face up on the field. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 Shadal spell or trap in your graveyard and add it to your hand. Like I said, I'd probably throw a Shadal package in here if I wasn't running Predaplanting. Predaplant Chimera Rafflesia. 1 Predaplant monster, 1 Dark monster. Again, your entire main deck is pretty much Dark. Once per turn, you can target one monster with level less or equal to this card and banish it. So anything 7 or lower, you get a free banish as long as you can target. When an attack is declared involving this card, so whether you or your opponent attacks it, and an opponent's face-up monster, keyword in that sense is face-up, you can activate this effect until end of turn, and that monster loses 1,000 attack. If it does, this card gains 1,000 attack. Once per turn during the standby phase, after this card is sent to the graveyard, it doesn't matter how, as long as it is sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 polymerization spell or fusion spell from your hand. This is another way I can get DP or Super Poly. Next we have Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. This requires 2 dark monsters on the field, specifically on the field, except tokens. If this card is fusion summoned, you can make it gain the attack of one of your opponent's special summon monsters until end of this turn. Once per turn, you can target 1 level 5 or higher monster your opponent controls until the end phase. This card name becomes that monster's original name, and replace the effect of that card with its original effects. You can technically have, in a sense, very strong. If your opponent summons DP, you can technically have a second DP. And then if this fusion and then you can blow it up to destroy all your opponent's special summon monsters. The DP counters, they're coming in hot. We run 2 of those. Same with Chimera. Next we have Predaplant Drago Stapelia. 1 fusion summon monster, 1 dark monster. Again, another great super poly target. Once per turn, click effect to trigger 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, place a predator counter on it. The only other way to get predator counters. And then negate the active effects of all your opponent's monsters that have predator counters. Another way to counter a DPE. Now we have Despian Quartus. Or Quaritis, my bad. Now this requires 1 Despia monster and 1 light or dark monster, which is again very common because 95% of your deck is dark. Quick effect, you can chain all the attack of monsters currently on the field to 0 this turn until the end of this turn, except for level 8 or higher fusion monsters. There are very few. I think there are a total of 4 cards in your deck that have lower than level 8. Yes. Back to Quaritis. If this face-up card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can add to your hand or special summon 1 Fallen Albaz or Despia monster from your deck. You can only use each effect of Despian Quaritis once per turn. Set everything into 0. Great for the battle phase. Not to mention, you can also, if this leaves the field by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon a Despia from your deck. DP, the man, the myth, the legend. Destiny Hero Destroy Phoenix Enforcer. This requires 1 level 6 or higher hero monster and 1 Destiny Hero monster. Again, you use Fusion Destiny for this. This effect isn't very relevant, but monster your opponent controls lose 200 attack for each hero monster in your graveyard. This is great in hero decks, not so great. It can sometimes come up in niche situations and other decks. You can only use each of the following effects of DP, Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer. My bad. Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer once per turn. Quick effect, you can destroy both 1 card you control, 1 card on the field. Again, this does not target whatsoever. It's non-targeting destruction. Why they made it that, I have no clue. If this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, does not specify by who, you can activate this effect. Special summon 1 Destiny Hero monster. This includes itself from your graveyard during the standby phase. What's great about this, if it rolls around to the standby phase and your opponent has a Solemn Judgment face down, they cannot negate it. They can only negate it when they activate the effect when it's destroyed. But they still can call by the grave, sadly. Next we have Masquerade of the Blazing Dragon. This requires 1 Despia monster and 1 light or dark monster, as every Despia monster I've seen so far has. While you control this fusion summon card, your opponent must pay 600 life points. This is to activate cards or effects. This is a great way, reminds me of Red Eye's Metal Flare Dragon and a Burn. If your opponent controls a Ritual Fusion or Synchro, XC, or Link monster while this card is in your graveyard, quick effect, you can special summon this card, but it banishes when it leaves the field. You can only use the effect of Masquerade the Blazing Dragon once per turn. Not much to say, it's a burn effect. Now this is Predaplant Tree for let's just call it Trify. This requires 3 dark monsters on the field. I cannot stress this enough. This is another great super poly target. Gains attack equals the total original attack of all their monsters on the field with predator counters. I don't think this card can put predator counters on things though. When your opponent special summons a monster from the extra while you control this fusion summon monster, you can negate the summon and if you destroy that monster. I forgot to mention you can only use each effect of this card once per turn. Next, if your opponent controls a monster with a predator counter, you can special summon this card from the graveyard. Great for Predaplanting actually. And Drago Stapelia, because it can put predator counters on things. Next we have Despian. I'm not even. Why are the Yu-Gi-Oh names so hard to pronounce? We'll just call it Prosken. This requires 1 Despia monster, 1 light, and 1 dark. This is one of the hardest ones to summon. During your main phase, but you can eat your opponent's Macabres with it, which is great. Same with most of the other Despian cards. During the main phase, quick effect, you can target 1 Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link monster in your opponent's graveyard, banish it, and then special summon it to your field. So you can then steal your opponent's Macabres. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can inflict the damage to your opponent equals to that monster's original attack or defense, whichever is higher. You can only use each effect of Despian Prosken once per turn. What can I say? It's wonderful. It looks like the big boss man right now for Despians. Finally, we have the first Dark Lord, which requires 3 Dark Fairy monsters, which all Despians are, so this is great in the mirror match. Hands down. Not to mention you can also summon it by having 3 Despians. Your opponent cannot target fairy monsters you control with card effects. Great additional effect, you can only use one of the following effects of the first Dark Lord once per turn. If the card is fused summon, that does not matter because we do not run Dark Lord Morningstar. During the main phase quick check, you can special summon, you can pay 1,000 life points to special summon 1 fairy monster from your hand or graveyard in defense position. That is a wonderful effect. It can extend you even further than you already were. Now that we've gotten through the card by card, what is the cost of this deck? The cost of this deck is kinda average actually. It's cheaper than the Dark Lord variant because Dark Lords are expensive as all heck. So let's look at it. For the Fusion Festival Predaplant Despia deck, you are going to be using 540 URCP if you're just crafting this from scratch. 330 URCP if you're not counting staple cards. I am not counting, what's it called? I'm not counting Super Poly in this. If you are, it would bring the total down to 270. It requires 390 SRCP, 360 rare CP, and then 360 normal CP. Now with all that out of the way, it's time for you to watch me lose to bots in Dueling Nexus, because bots run broken banned stuff. Unfortunately. But technically with Maxi Legal and Master Duel, we're technically running banned things in OCG and TCG formats, so I do not feel so bad. Now let's drop the deck stats, drop the games, and it's time for the game. If it wants to. Oh, that's louder than loud. No offense, I do not want. Do not place my spells automatically. That'll mess me up horrendously. Yeah, let's not worry about that. We are using, if I can ever find it, Despia Predaplant. And let's go. Paper strats always win. We are going first. I remember why I hate dueling mixes now. Die. Hello? There we go. Oh. And we got Predaplanting. So this is live. No. No. Alright. We're gonna start with a branded opening. Pitching Despian Tragedy. What do we want in this case? I think we want a Luber the Super Duper. Maybe? Chain Despian Tragedy. Chain a Luber. Give me another branded opening for next turn. Or technically during my opponent's turn. Next we shall get us Dramaturge. And throw us down. I think I want Masquerade in this situation. Dramaturge. This loses to a Lightning Storm, but we didn't use our normal summon. I think we're good here. This deck isn't very explosive, sadly, but it happens. Imagine activating Upstart Goblin for 600 life points. Oh, alright. I don't like where this is going. I really don't like where this is going. Ow. Not going for... Okay. Dramaturge is safe. I'll Predaplanting here. I really don't care for Sarah's. Super Volley. Super Volley. No. Honestly, I'll take this. Yep. And that Predaplanting is now used. Yep. Sure, have your reckless greed. And Maxi, okay, Yeah, Masquerade is the best thing I could do in this situation. That looks like lethal at this point. Yeah, that's... Alright. I didn't think I was gonna fight Blue Eyes. I think this is one of the worst representations for this, but you know, it worked. Well, that's the deck. It's okay in my book. It's great that we did not see DP, and if they happened to get rid of my monster, they would have, the Chimera Rafflesia, they would have seen DP. All in all, it's consistent, but I don't know how it's gonna fare. Like, you can always get synchros and get boss monsters out, but you need discard fodder half the time, which isn't a bad thing. You usually have some sort of discard fodder, whether it's a dead Predaplants or dead Lone Fires even. But I thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace.